Hi, I'm Lisa Genova. I'm the author of Still Alice. This book was inspired by my grandmother who had Alzheimer's. She was in her 80s and we as a family sort of ignored her Alzheimer's for a pretty long time. I think we're like a lot of families in that we assumed that her forgetting and cognitive lapses were a normal part of normal aging. But by the time she was 85, she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And so my background is in neuroscience. I used to do brain research. And so I read everything I could find about Alzheimer's to learn about this disease that my grandmother had and to pass that education along to my aunts and parents who were her primary caregivers. And I learned a lot of valuable information, but the thing that was missing, the sort of crucial piece of information that we needed really to stay connected to her was, what does it feel like to have this from the point of view of the person who has it? So everything I read was written by a clinician or a scientist or a caregiver or a social worker. And so they were all views from the outside looking in. And so this question of what does it feel like to have Alzheimer's was really the seed for this book. And I'm so excited about this film. I'm so grateful to the directors, Wash Westmoreland and Richard Glatzer, who wrote the screenplay and directed it, to Julianne Moore, who did such a beautiful job both researching this role and then using that information to portray Alice with so much authenticity and dignity and vulnerability. This movie is told, like the book, in the subjective point of view of Alice. So you really get to sit in the seat of someone living with Alzheimer's. And so one of the things that I hope this movie accomplishes is that it drags Alzheimer's out of the drags Alzheimer's out of the closet and into now the movie theater, where you can get a really vivid, visceral example of what living with Alzheimer's and struggling to live with all that you are every moment with Alzheimer's. What does that look like, sound like, feel like? I think the general public has historically thought of Alzheimer's as an elderly disease of the dying, and that's a pretty easy population to ignore. And so if it doesn't exist, it's awfully hard to cure and get resources for support. So what I really hope that this movie does is give us an example of a compassionate awareness for Alzheimer's. It helps us begin to talk about this disease, which I know is really scary. And yet, if we're going to stay connected to our loved ones who have this, if we're going to find treatments that ultimately give us Alzheimer's survivors, we need to begin to talk about this disease and not shun it to the dark shadows. So I'm so excited about this film. I'm so proud of what they've done. If you love the book, I know you're going to love the film. If you haven't read the book, you're going to love the film. So sit back and enjoy.